The cargo ship Horizon shuddered violently as it entered DX-249's atmosphere. Jack gripped his pilot's seat, fighting the controls as warning lights flooded the cockpit. Behind him, the alien passenger Red clutched their seat with all four arms, their crystalline skin reflecting the emergency lights. Engines failing. Jack shouted over the blaring alarms. Braced for impact. The planet's purple clouds parted to reveal a landscape of jagged black rocks and steaming vents. Jack pulled back hard on the controls, trying to level their descent. The ship's hull screamed in protest as pieces began breaking away. Red's translator crackled. The atmosphere. It's highly toxic. If we crash, we need sealed environments immediately. Jack nodded grimly, already seeing their trajectory. They were going down hard, but he could still choose where. He aimed for a relatively flat area between two rocky ridges. Emergency beacon activated. Hold on. The impact was devastating. The Horizon slammed into the ground, splitting apart as it skidded across the rocky surface. Jack's world became a blur of motion and sound before darkness claimed him. He awoke to the hiss of escaping air and the acrid smell of burning electronics. His emergency suit had auto-sealed, thankfully. Through his cracked visor, he saw the cockpit was barely recognizable. Where Red had been sitting was now a hole torn in the ship's hull. Fighting dizziness, Jack freed himself from his restraints. His suit's sensors screamed warnings about the external atmosphere, highly toxic, corrosive, and hot enough to kill unprotected life in minutes. He had to find Red. Despite their species differences, no one deserved to die alone on this rock. Jack limped through the wreckage, following a trail of scattered cargo and ship parts. His suit's radio crackled with static, but no response to his calls. The purple sky cast an eerie light over the devastation, and in the distance, something large moved among the rock formations. He found Red half-buried in cargo containers about 50 meters from the main wreck. The alien's crystalline body was cracked in several places, but their environmental suit had also activated. Their four eyes blinked slowly as Jack approached. "Can you move?" Jack asked, hoping Red's translator still worked. Functionality. Limited, Red responded weakly, but survival possible. "You came back." "Of course, we've got to stick together." Jack helped Red get upright, noting how the alien's normally smooth crystal surface was dulled by stress fractures. The ship's emergency shelter should have deployed. "We need to find it before night falls." "Night brings predators," Red said, gesturing to the moving shapes in the distance. "And temperatures dropped to lethal levels." They gathered what supplies they could carry from the scattered cargo. Medical kits, emergency rations, repair tools. Jack's hand brushed something in the wreckage that made him pause. A small holophoto of Red's family unit, still working despite the crash. He handed it to the alien without a word. Red's crystalline features shifted in what Jack had learned was their species' version of a smile. "Perhaps humans are not as primitive as my people believe. And maybe your kind isn't as cold as we thought," Jack replied, helping Red walk. "Come on. We've got a shelter to find and a lot of surviving to do." Together, they limped across the hostile landscape, two unlikely allies against a world that seemed determined to kill them. Above, the purple sky darkened ominously, and distant roars echoed across the rocky plains. Their journey was just beginning. The emergency shelter was barely big enough for both of them. Bob sat cross-legged on one side, while Blue's crystalline form took up the other half. Their breath masks lay between them, two different designs for two very different species, but both serving the same vital purpose. "The air recycler won't last more than a week," Bob said, checking their supplies. The shelter's interior lights cast strange shadows through Blue's transparent body, creating patterns on the metal walls. "My people's technology might help," Blue replied through their translator. "If we combine your air filters with my atmospheric processor, we could extend that to 3 weeks. Bob raised an eyebrow. "You'd share your tech with me?" "I thought that was against your laws." "Laws matter little when survival is at stake," Blue's crystal segments shifted in what Bob had learned was amusement. Besides, you surprised me by returning for me after the crash. Perhaps some of our assumptions about humans were incorrect. They'd worked together through the planet's long day cycle. Bob's practical experience with ship systems complemented Blue's advanced technical knowledge. When Bob couldn't fit his hands into a tight space, Blue's smaller secondary arms proved perfect for the delicate work. As they worked, the ground occasionally trembled. Through the shelter's small viewport, they watched massive shapes move across the purple landscape. The local wildlife was active, and none of it seemed friendly. "These readings are fascinating," Blue said, studying their scanner. "The atmosphere shouldn't be this toxic naturally. Something changed this planet." "Changed it? You mean like terraforming gone wrong? Or weapons of mass destruction? My species has records of ancient wars that could turn paradise worlds into death zones." Their conversation was interrupted by a violent tremor. The shelter's supports groaned. Outside, a creature larger than their crashed ship moved past, its multiple limbs leaving deep impressions in the rocky ground. "We need better shelter," Bob said, watching the monster disappear into the purple haze. "This emergency pod won't survive if one of those things gets curious." Blue's crystalline form pulsed with what Bob recognized as anxiety. "Agreed. My scans show a network of caves 2 kilometers east. They might offer more protection." "Through open ground, with those things out there?" Bob shook his head. "That's a hell of a risk." "Sometimes, friend Bob, survival requires risking death." Blue's translator made the words sound flat, but their glowing eyes showed sincerity. "And I would rather face death moving forward than waiting for it here." Bob looked at their dwindling supplies, then at the hostile landscape outside. "Friend Blue, I think you're right. We'll gather what we can carry and go at first light. Together." "Together," Blue agreed, their crystalline form glowing slightly brighter. "Perhaps this is why the universe brought our species together. To learn that courage and wisdom know no biological bounds." They spent the rest of the day's cycle preparing, each learning to trust the other a little more with every passing hour. As the purple sky darkened to black, they took turns keeping watch, sharing stories of their worlds, their families, and their hopes of survival. The cave seemed safe until the screaming started. Dan gripped his makeshift spear, fashioned from a piece of their crashed ship, while Green's crystalline body pulsed with warning lights. Outside their shelter, something big was hunting. "Movement patterns suggest pack hunters," Green whispered through their translator. "Similar to your Earth wolves, but much larger." The creature's cries echoed through the cave system, getting closer. Dan's handheld light revealed claw marks on the walls, some higher than he could reach. "How many exits did we count?" "2. Main entrance and the narrow tunnel leading deeper." Green's secondary arms worked quickly, adjusting their remaining defensive equipment. But the deeper tunnel showed signs of recent use. A shadow passed their cave's entrance, followed by hot breath that reeked of sulfur. Dan's suit sensors screamed warnings about the toxic atmosphere mixing with their carefully filtered air. The barrier they'd erected was failing. "They're testing our defenses," Dan said, moving closer to Green. "Just like wolves. They're smart." The first attack came from above. A creature with 6 legs and a mouth full of acid-dripping fangs dropped from a hidden tunnel in the cave's ceiling. Dan reacted on instinct, driving his spear upward. The creature's tough hide resisted at first, then gave way. But it wasn't alone. 2 more burst through their barrier, their black scales reflecting the emergency lights. Green fired their last charge of energy pulse, stunning one. The other leaped at Dan, who barely rolled away in time. "The tunnel," Green shouted. "We must go deeper." Dan grabbed their essential supplies while Green covered their retreat. The narrow passage barely fit them, and Dan could hear the creatures struggling to follow. Their larger bodies were at disadvantage here. They ran through twisting passages, their lights casting wild shadows. The hunters' cries echoed behind them, mixed with the sound of claws on stone. Green's crystal body provided some illumination, but it was fading, a sign of their depleting energy. "Look." Green pointed ahead with two arms while the other two held their failing equipment. A faint blue glow emanated from a side passage. "That's not natural light." They had no choice but to investigate. The passage opened into a larger chamber, and both stopped in amazement. The walls were lined with ancient technology, still giving off a feeble glow. Symbols neither recognized covered the surfaces. The hunting cries were getting closer. Dan quickly sealed the passage behind them with debris while Green examined the technology. "This is older than my civilization," they said with awe. "Much older. Can it help us survive?" Dan asked, reinforcing their barricade. Green's crystal body pulsed with excitement. "These readings, Dan, this isn't just a cave. It's an entrance to something much bigger, something that might be our salvation." The hunters slammed against their barricade. Dan and Green shared a look that transcended their species' differences. They'd found something important, but first, they had to survive the night. "Something's wrong," Max said, watching Purple slump against the ancient corridor's wall. The alien's crystalline body had lost its usual luster, turning cloudy in spots. "Your color's changing." "Local microorganisms," Purple responded weakly through their translator. "My protective systems are failing. This planet, it's more hostile than we thought." They had been exploring the underground facility for 2 days, following the faint power signatures deeper into the planet. The ancient technology lining the walls hummed with dormant energy, but many sections were damaged or completely dead. "We need to find the central chamber," Purple insisted, trying to stand. Their forearms trembled with the effort. "These readings suggest massive power source ahead." Max supported his alien companion, worried by how light they felt. Purple's crystalline body was losing mass. "You need rest. The microorganisms will eventually overcome my defenses regardless," Purple interrupted. "Our only hope is to reach the facility's core." The readings, they suggest terraforming technology that could make this planet livable. They pressed on through the dimly lit corridors. Max carried most of their supplies now, along with Purple when they couldn't walk. The ancient facility seemed to go on forever, twisting deeper into the planet's crust. Strange symbols covered the walls, telling stories neither could fully understand. Sometimes they passed massive windows looking out into underground caverns filled with dead machinery. Whatever civilization built this place had been incredibly advanced. "Look," Purple pointed weakly at a new set of readings. "Energy levels rising. We're getting close." A distant rumble shook the corridor. Parts of the ceiling crumbled, forcing them to dodge falling debris. The facility was unstable, probably had been for centuries. "The planet's core," Purple explained between labored breaths. "It's more active than initial scans suggested. This facility. It's not just for terraforming. It's keeping something contained." They reached a massive door, covered in warning symbols that needed no translation. Beyond it, a soft blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. The door's control panel still functioned, asking for input in an unknown language. "I can't focus enough to decode it," Purple said, their voice growing fainter. "The infection. Spreading too fast." Max studied the alien symbols, remembering patterns they'd seen throughout the facility. "Maybe we don't need to decode it. Look, these symbols keep repeating, like a pattern." He pressed the symbols in the order they'd seen them displayed throughout their journey. The door shuddered, then slowly began to open. Beyond it lay their greatest hope, and possibly their greatest challenge. "Together," Purple whispered, their crystalline form growing dimmer. "Together," Max agreed, helping his friend through the doorway. "Let's save this world, and you with it." The chamber beyond held secrets that would change everything, if they could survive long enough to unlock them. The central chamber was vast, stretching hundreds of meters in every direction. Jim stood at its heart, surrounded by towering pillars of light that reached into darkness above. Gray, his crystalline companion, lay propped against a control panel, their once bright form now clouded and dim. "It's beautiful," Gray whispered through their failing translator. "A perfect fusion of technology and planetary force. The ancients, they were trying to save this world, not destroy it." Jim studied the holographic displays floating around them. Though he couldn't read the alien text, the images told a clear story. This planet hadn't been ruined by war. It had been purposely transformed into a prison. "They were containing something," he said, watching the simulations play out. "Something in the planet's core. The toxic atmosphere, the extreme conditions, it's all part of a containment system." Gray's crystalline form flickered weakly. "Yes, and the system is failing. That's why the core is becoming unstable. The facility's power, it's almost gone." The chamber shuddered as another tremor passed through. Warning lights flashed across the ancient consoles. Jim helped Gray examine the readings, their different perspectives combining to understand the facility's purpose. "The good news," Gray said, "is that the main systems are still operational. We could reactivate them, make this world livable again. But the power required, it would consume our distress beacon's energy. We have to choose, save ourselves, or save this world." Jim looked at his dying friend, then at the massive machinery around them. The choice seemed impossible. Their beacon was their only hope of rescue, but if they didn't stabilize the facility, the planet itself might tear apart, and them with it. "There's more," Gray continued, their voice growing weaker. "The containment. It's not just holding something in. It's holding something back. A force that could change everything we know about energy manipulation." Another tremor, stronger this time. Parts of the ceiling crashed down around them. The facility's countdown displays all showed the same thing. They had hours, at most, before total system failure. "The ancients found a way to harness planetary cores as power sources," Gray explained. "But this one, it was too powerful, too dangerous. So they built this facility to contain it, to slowly bleed off its energy over millennia." Jim's mind raced with possibilities. If we restore the containment system, could we also harness some of that power? Maybe even use it to power a different kind of signal. Gray's crystal structure brightened slightly, the first sign of hope in days. Yes. The math, it could work. But Jim, interfacing with these systems, it's incredibly dangerous. One wrong calculation. "Then we'll make our calculations right," Jim said firmly. Together. Their time was running out, but they had found something greater than just hope. They had found purpose. The ancient facility's control room pulsed with red warning lights. Bill watched as White, his crystalline friend, worked with trembling hands across 3 different control panels. The infection had spread through most of White's crystalline body, leaving dark patches that seemed to grow by the minute. "The containment systems need full power," White said, their translator crackling with interference. "But if we divert everything, including our beacon's power, we'll be stranded here permanently," Bill finished. The math was simple but brutal. They had enough power for one task: either restart the planet's containment systems or boost their distress beacon to reach the nearest shipping lane. Another quake rocked the facility, stronger than before. Cracks appeared in the chamber's walls, and ancient metal groaned under stress. The planet's core was becoming dangerously unstable. "My people," White said softly, "they would choose the beacon. Save ourselves. Let this world die. It's the logical choice." Bill looked at the historical data flowing across the screens. "But this facility, it's not just containing the core's energy. According to these readings, if we restart it properly, it could transform the whole planet, make it livable again. Yes, the ancients, they built this as more than a prison. It's a conversion system." White's glow flickered weakly. The core's power could be harnessed, channeled into terraforming. But the risk. A massive tremor shook the facility. Support beams crashed down around them. The planet was running out of time, and so was White. "My infection," White continued, "Even if we succeed, I might not survive long enough for rescue." Bill placed his hand on White's crystalline surface, feeling the heat of the infection burning within. "You're not just my friend now. You're proof that our species can work together, understand each other. If we choose the beacon, we might survive, but we'll lose the chance to show both our peoples what we discovered here." White's inner light pulsed stronger for a moment. A legacy greater than survival. A future worth more than just living. Bill moved to the main control panel. Together. Together. White agreed, their four hands joining Bill's on the controls. "Let's give this dead world a chance at new life." They began the restart sequence, knowing their choice might be their last. But in that moment, both human and alien understood they were part of something greater than themselves. The ancient machinery hummed to life, glowing with power not seen for millennia. Sam's hands flew across the controls while Brown, despite their weakened crystalline form, guided the complex energy flows from the planet's core. "Core temperature stabilizing," Brown announced, their voice stronger than it had been in days. "The containment field it's not just holding the energy, it's transforming it." Through the facility's viewing screens, they watched in awe as the transformation began. The toxic purple atmosphere started to shift, breaking down into more stable compounds. Where before there had been only death, now there was possibility. "The ancients," Brown said, their crystalline form beginning to clear as the planet's hostile elements were neutralized. "They didn't just build a prison. They built a cradle for new life." Sam checked the readings with growing excitement. The core's energy, it's being converted into a sustainable terraforming field. And look, the power signature it's creating. It's stronger than any beacon we could have built. Brown finished, their four eyes glowing brighter. The energy pattern, it's unique, impossible to miss. The ground ceased its trembling as the containment field fully engaged. Through the facility's windows, they watched the purple sky slowly turn blue. The deadly atmosphere was being transformed into something that could sustain life. "Your infection," Sam noticed, "it's retreating." Brown examined their own crystalline body, watching the dark patches fade. The terraforming field, it's not just changing the planet. It's restoring balance to all life forms here. They paused, emotions clear in their glowing eyes. "We did this. Together." A new alert sounded, different from the warning klaxons they'd grown used to. On their screens, multiple ships appeared, dropping out of faster-than-light travel. "They've detected the power signature," Sam said, grinning. "Both our people's ships, they came together." "Of course they did," Brown replied, their translator conveying amusement. "After all, if a human and a crystalline being can save a planet together, perhaps anything is possible." The rescue ships landed on newly stabilized ground under a clearing sky. When their crews found Sam and Brown, they discovered not just survivors, but pioneers who had unlocked an ancient secret and transformed a dead world into a beacon of hope. The planet would become the first joint colony between humans and crystalline beings, a testament to what could be achieved when different species worked together. And at its heart, the ancient facility continued its work, powered by the very force it had once been built to contain, watched over by two friends who had learned that the greatest discoveries come not from power or technology, but from trust and cooperation.